Good afternoon and welcome to Concussions Anonymous with Karen Monet from the Opticalm Visual Stress Clinic and
Lisa Khera from In Balance Pilates. If you're popping on, can you let us know if we are upright, vertical, or horizontal? Because we're having a little...
We're learning as we go. We are taping this as well on my phone, so we will have the proper video on our
Yes.
YouTube channel afterwards. But for now, here we are live, Friday afternoon at lunch on a beautiful, sunny, finally, snowy day in Ottawa. We're here talking about concussions.
Exactly, we're here talking about Concussions Anonymous. So again, yes, Lisa popping in from In Balance Pilates. If you're joining us live, thanks for popping in. If you're watching on the replay, you can definitely pop a replay in the comments below.
So, our topic for today came up after a Facebook post that I did earlier this week. I understand that patterns in the environment can be very painful for some people who've had a concussion. And this has been something that doesn't bother me, but definitely the clients that we see in the office. Patterns do trigger a lot of visual difficulties, a lot of headaches, and a lot of perceptual distortions. Now, I asked you earlier, Lisa, if you had experienced pattern sensitivity, and you didn't. You say you don't. It was other things.
Yeah, for me it's more like if there's a ceiling fan. So that flicker going on in the periphery, and big open rooms. So like going into a big gymnasium, anywhere where the periphery was really opened up.
So it wasn't the light so much in those areas or the patterns in the environment, it was the amount of information.
That's right.
Okay.
For me, yeah.
I think that's an important topic. We'll talk about that. Well, it's definitely flicker, because flicker is very closely related to the patterns. The open space is that peripheral vision. That's going to be part of when we talk about vision issues and concussion, and lighting. Lighting. So we'll talk about those. Will be other subjects that we will talk about on Concussions Anonymous. But let's get back to the patterns. So I was on my way to the drugstore and I went past a clothing display. Excuse me, I have a cough. And I noticed a full series of clothing that was very highly patterned. It was black and white.
And that was the picture you posted.
That was the picture I posted.
Okay. So that was a real store popping by.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it wasn't just that one display. It was countertop. It was the model. It was several different, there were scarves. There were so many items that were patterned. And I thought, oh gosh, this is not going to be an easy place for someone with pattern sensitivity associated with their concussion to be in. It's also a trigger for migraines as well. So people may not realize that these visual triggers are in their environment, and because they didn't bother them before their head injury, they may not realize what it is in that environment that is causing them discomfort, but they'll know they can't look at it. Now, in the post, so I had the picture, we got a lot of comments back from people saying, this is really painful. Oh, this hurts my... One lady said it burns my eyes. So that is understandable, because that pattern is causing their whole visual system to negatively react to that image. And it actually hyperactivates the brain. So the visual cortex back here gets agitated by those patterns that it sees. Now, if you're somebody that those patterns don't bother, you may not recognize that it's important for you to consider your environment when helping people with concussions.
Definitely.
So whether you're a therapist, physiotherapist, now
a teacher, even,
absolutely,
dealing with students,
there is a school in Ottawa actually that recognizes this, Heritage Academy, and they took out their horizontal blinds. They
oh right, even blinds.
Yeah, there are a lot, and I'm going to get into some of those things in your environment that are patterned that you may not even think about. A, because it didn't bother you before, and B, because you're so bothered by everything, you can't pinpoint what those things are.
And even your workspace, if you're going back to your job, and as I look at the window here, if you're constantly looking at
the
siding,
building across the street is really straight.
Bricks, anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
That pattern, even though you take out the horizontal or vertical blinds and you put in a roller blind, that blind might have a pattern in it that when the sun shines through, I had a lot of doctor's appointment this week. So I was at a doctor's appointment and I was sitting in the chair with the vertical blinds or the horizontal blinds, the light coming through on the desk. I took a picture. I will post it on Facebook. It was a pattern hell for people. And here I am in the doctor's office. So when do you go to the doctor? When you've had a concussion. When do you go to the doctor? When you have migraines. And that over half of the office was stripes. So
Okay.
if you went in there with a headache, you'd be going, oh my God, I cannot be here. And you might even get to a point where you avoid going to your therapy
Right.
appointments because it's so painful for you to go there. So this summer I was speaking with the president of the Canadian Brain Injury Association. We were talking about this exact subject, and she asked me to write an article for their newsletter, which I did. I will make the link available after. It'll be on both of our Facebook pages.
Perfect.
But the idea, it was called "The Influence of Visual Triggers on Symptoms in Brain Injury and Concussion." I know, long title, but so there were a few things that I wanted to bring here based from that article. And specifically the one on patterns, and I talked about patterns in your environment and to look for them. So look at your carpeting, your fabrics in your house, the artwork on your walls, the painting we have in the other room where we did our presentation the last few times. It has a patterned image on it, and we actually use that in our testing. I don't know if I mentioned that last time, but
that rolling beach.
yeah, it's a beautiful beach scene from IKEA, and you think, oh, it's so relaxing, but it has that series of fence posts.
Definitely, and that are all quite wavy.
Yeah, so that is definitely a trigger. So you liked it before, either remove it, put something else up, and this can be temporary, really, until you have gone through your recovery, and you can pull it back out and, hey, great, you're now comfortable, you've recovered, you can now get your place back all stripey and however you want it to be. So
but definitely modify your home scenario
Yeah.
and make what you're visually looking at pleasing to your eye.
And go into
calming.
it actively. Actively go in and evaluate all these things that you're looking at, because the images accumulate, that strain, that stress on your brain, it accumulates until you don't look at it anymore. So you may feel you have to close your eyes and just regroup or reboot, and then you can open your eyes again and you're okay for a little bit, but then you get overwhelmed with that visual image again. So so
do you think breathing through, like if they were at an appointment where there was no choice, they were in a room where
closing their eyes, doing their breathing exercises, not looking at it.
Okay, yeah.
Just, we had a client in recently, and I was explaining this to him, and he said, oh, that explains why he was at a Christmas party. And he said, I was sitting in the living room, and there was this pattern on the wall opposite me, and I was trying so hard to listen to, it was his granddaughter. I really wanted to hear what she had to say, but I was so agitated. I said, can we switch spots? And they did, and then everything was fine. But he didn't know why it was that he had to switch spots. He just felt agitated.
Yeah.
And, oh, that's why I was agitated. You know, he didn't consciously realize that it was that patterned image or that artwork that was on the wall. So actively evaluate your visual environment for stripes and patterns. And these stripes can be black on white. They can be opposite colors. It can be multicolored. But if it is a geometric, not a natural pattern, although some people are sensitive to circles, and take a look at the patterns in your environment and do what you can to change them. Yes, it's true, you can't change everything. You have to learn to
push it a little
or avoid, but that's why we have our filters, because the filters that we supply people with help them not have that trigger in their environment.
And that's why, again, another area to be mindful, right? The more you're in the moment, being really aware of how you're feeling, right? How do you feel when you go to a certain appointment or a certain facility or center? There is a physiotherapy firm that we've worked with a little bit, and I was presenting them on this subject, and they said, oh, that must be why when our clients go down in the beds to get their physiotherapy or massage, they have to put towels down on the ground so that they're not looking at the patterned carpet. Oh, that's why we have to put towels down so our clients don't feel nauseous. That's actually something I'd like to talk about too, is what are the symptoms of this pattern sensitivity? First of all, differ for everyone,
it does, because some people may just feel a sense of nausea, a sense of dizziness. Their brain is seeing this pattern, and it may appear as if it's moving, or it's distorted, or it's not dimensionally the way the brain thinks it should be. So because of that, the brain gets just uncomfortable. It gets stressed and it hyperactivates. So you could have the symptom of just dizziness and nausea. And I'd like to add that text is a striped pattern. So if you find when you're reading text and you're dizzy and nauseous, it could be because of that striped pattern. Some people don't get dizzy and nauseous, but they feel like they see distortions. They might see flashing in and it could be all in their vision. They might see lights or colors, or get a headache. And that's the first thing that happens, is the headache before the nausea and all those other things.
And would you say, I would assume that you've probably encountered a lot of children that appear to be having behavioral issues.
Absolutely.
And then it's just that environment.
It is just the environment. Yeah. Attention deficit is a perfect example of that.
So how would a parent, what would be the first step for a parent to...
What I did with my son, when I first found out about pattern sensitivity, I sat him down with a piece of paper with a lot of text on it. I think it was a document from the school or something like that. It was full of text. So when you look at text, you see how stripy it is. So I had him look at that text, and I asked him, what does it look like? What do you see when you look at this page of text? What's happening on the page? I didn't ask him to read it. I just asked him to tell me what it looks like. Oh, Mommy, it's so cool. The words go in circles. There are lights. Oh, well, that must make it really hard to read. Well, it does. I can see one word at a time, the one that I focus on, but all the other ones are moving. Isn't it like that for you, Mom? No. So people who've had a concussion know the before and after. Children don't know the before because it's always been this way for them. So there are different causes of visual stress in this neurohyperactivation. The concussion can make pre-existing conditions worse. So if you already had dyslexia or migraines or autism or chronic fatigue or any neurodevelopmental or neurological condition where visual problems are a factor, the concussion can make those things worse. So we're actually not addressing concussion symptoms, we're addressing those pre-existing condition, the pattern sensitivity associated with those earlier conditions. But the concussion has made it urgent. It needs to be taken care of urgently. So definitely patterns, sensitivity to patterns, and this is not new. This sensitivity to pattern understanding has been researched, I think it's been about 30 years in the UK, where they have something called a pattern glare test, and that pattern glare test is used to identify the severity of your pattern sensitivity.
Okay.
And it's been used in research for years. On our website, on opticalm.ca, there is a section on pattern sensitivity, and it gives you all of these resources to look at the research and to understand better what's happening in the brain when this happens. So we've been collecting data on our concussion clients for the last 3 years. We've been mostly focusing on concussion, but we've got data for migraine and learning difficulties for the 2 years before that. And our pattern sensitivity is really high, and they're concussion clients. So they're coming to us already. We pretty much understand from the referral, the facilities that are referring to us, they already know these people are coming to us with pattern sensitivity. And that's great, because those are the clients we can help. You don't need to wear filters because you don't have pattern sensitivity. You've recovered in most areas. You still have some issues, but they're not related to your neurohyperactivity. So there's nothing really we can do to help you with filters. There's no point. You don't need them, right? I don't need them either. What else did I want to say about pattern? Oh, you mentioned it briefly. I talked about clinics, but you mentioned teachers. And yes, what are you wearing? You may love that striped
as a practitioner and teacher, definitely.
So as a teacher in front of the classroom, you're working with children, and there's one in the class that he won't look at you. He looks like he's distracted and looking away. Look at what you're wearing. Look at the patterns behind you on the wall. You may be in a classroom where you love to laminate everything, and you've got all sorts of images and things on the walls. Look at that from the child's point of view. Turn yourself around, sit in the seats, and say, okay, if I'm asking these students to pay attention to me, what am I having them look at? I want them to focus on me. The whiteboard, is the whiteboard always on? Is it always on with text and things on it? Think about what the student is looking at when you're asking them to pay attention. There may be a lot of distracting patterned images in that environment that you should
That's a really good point. And I mean, if you're not familiar with that type of
you wouldn't know
investigation,
otherwise.
Yeah.
I didn't know otherwise. Oh, excuse me.
But yeah, no, just learn. The more we can learn various paths to discover and things to get assessed and things to check out, and just keep learning as much as you can.
As doctor's appointments were for this week. I'm out. Thank you for listening.
Right before vacation. That's always the way, right?
Thank you for listening. I have no more than I can say.
Thank you so much for watching. Again, it's Lisa Khera popping in from In Balance Pilates. Our apologies if this has come up sideways on my Facebook page. And
Karen Monet from the Opticalm Visual Stress Clinic. Have a nice weekend.
Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. I'll make her some tea.
Thanks.